You're listening to the Pink Tax Podcast, where being a woman costs more and we've got the receipts. From overpriced razors to underpaid roles, we're talking money, power, and the price of showing up. Let's get into it. Welcome back to the last episode of Season 1 of the Pink Tax Podcast, or I guess Season 1 of the revamp, which is actually Season 6. So, welcome back. Today I'm doing a solo episode, and I wanted to talk about something big financially that happened to me in 2025, which was the purchase of this home that I am sitting in. So I thought I would share literally everything, all the details around it, hopefully to be helpful to some of you listening who might be purchasing a home. And also, I think to dispel some myths, because I think as Canadians, we are very, very obsessed with homeownership. And I think it's been this way for a long time. The kind of formula for success has often been, go to university, graduate, get a full-time job, buy a house, get married, all of the things. And I think sometimes we need permission to maybe not do all of those things necessarily in that order, or not do all of those things at all. And I think because we've, made this decision as a country that real estate is really important, and a lot of people think it's a great investment, we become really hyper fixated on it. And I think that can be dangerous. So I want to get into some of the statistics. In Canada, 66.5% of us own real estate. And in Alberta, that number is about 70%, so a little bit higher. When we compare that to kind of different nations around the world, and I've pulled some statistics that I think it's really interesting. Germany has a rate of about 47%. France, 61% are homeowners. Romania is 95%. And Italy is 75%. Now, I was like, why is this? That's really high levels of home ownership in Romania. Now, these super high rates occur in former communist states or countries. The collapse of the Soviet Union in the 1990s, the early 1990s, transitioned all of kind of the state-owned residential property so that tenants could actually purchase those homes for a very low or nominal fee. And that is why we see such high levels of homeownership in places like Romania. Now, in many Southern European countries, so like Italy, it's a bit more of a cultural thing. So security and family stability are more likely to be the reasons why people own homes there. And there's a very strong social pressure to own a home. And I think that is also very true in Canada. I think there's often lots of rhetoric around, like, if you're not buying a home, you're paying someone else's mortgage, you're wasting money. And I think, for me at least, I've always tried to reframe that as you're either borrowing money from the bank to purchase a home and you're paying them interest, or you're basically borrowing a place to live and paying them a fee to do that. And that's what renting is. And I know some people will be like, what about equity? And we'll get into that all, I promise. I think, though, in many situations, you're usually actually better investing than purchasing a home. But there are lots of reasons to own a home. This is the second home my husband and I have purchased. And while I don't necessarily love being a homeowner in the sense that if anything breaks, it's on us, there are definite reasons to own a home. And those usually come from more of an emotional standpoint. And I think those are also important to consider as well, right? We know what school we're going to be sending our son to. We know that we're never going to get evicted from our home, obviously, provided we always pay the mortgage. And so I think that from a stability perspective, there definitely are reasons that people might want to own homes. But is it a good investment is the question. So when we look at countries with lower rates, because I wanted to dive into why do some countries have higher home ownership rates and lower? When we look at the lower home ownership rates, higher down payments are often required, and banks typically have stricter stress test rules and higher transaction costs. So Germany was a really good example. 10 to 15% of the purchase price for some of these transaction costs. And they do also have a really robust rental market with a lot of regulation. And I think, at least in Alberta, I think we're missing some of that regulation in the rental market, and people are allowed to just jack up the rent kind of as they see fit. One of the other reasons that we originally bought our first home was because we wanted to become parents, and the condo building we were living in was 18 plus, which is insane because I know a lot of provinces actually have legislation against that. Alberta does not. So we bought our first townhome in 2019, and it was part of a fourplex. It was 2 bedrooms up, 1 bedroom down, and it was perfect for us at the time. Once we had our first kid, we were like, oh, kids take up so much room. And back then, also, there wasn't really a lot of work from home. So my husband was working in the office. I had a little office on the main floor, but I would go into the office a lot too. Obviously, then the pandemic hit, and then both of us were working from home, and it started to feel really small for both of us working and living and having a kid and a dog in that space. And I know that that's a very privileged thing to say because we had about 600 square feet across 3 floors, and that's more than a lot of people have. But it did start to feel like we had way too much stuff in our house and not enough space for us to work and live and separate the two. So we knew we wanted to get into a little bit of a bigger home. Looking back, we probably should have done it while I was still in corporate because, and I will get into this, there is a whole headache with being an entrepreneur and trying to qualify for a home. But I don't know, just coming out of the pandemic, being new parents, it just seemed very chaotic. Anyways, so we bought this place in June of 2025, and we moved in at the end of August. And we had probably been looking at that point for about a year. I think we started September 2024. We were really picky though at that point. We didn't want to go look at a ton of different places. I feel bad for our real estate agent, Madison, who is wonderful, but she probably was like, here's a place. And we were like, no. So we were very focused on staying in the neighborhood that we were in because we love it. We wanted a bigger place with a 3rd bedroom upstairs. I wanted a dedicated office space. It had to be modern enough that we wouldn't need to necessarily do a lot of renos because my husband and I are not handy at all. And we needed kind of dedicated space for working at home, as well as obviously being able to live and entertain all of the things. We also wanted to live on a little bit of a quieter street. And I think having a full-size garage wasn't like a must-have, but it was definitely a nice to have. So we had some more storage. So back in 2019, we bought our townhouse for $580,000, and it is in the heart of the city in a very desirable location. It was brand new. It has air conditioning. It was millennial gray, and we basically needed to do nothing to it, which was fantastic for our first home. That's exactly what we wanted. We put about 30% down on that house, $170,000, I think, because we really wanted to keep our mortgage low, which I think was really smart at the time because we definitely could have put less down, but keeping our mortgage payments low throughout the COVID years was really important. And obviously we couldn't see into the future, but there were times when one or both of us wasn't really working or working a lot. I was on mat leave, then my husband took some time off. So there was a lot of times where our income fluctuated a lot. And so being able to keep that mortgage payment low was really, really important. And I'm very grateful that we decided to do that. So on, I think, June 7th, which was exactly one day after, I think, our 10-year wedding anniversary, if I'm remembering the dates correctly, this place that we currently live in popped up on our alert notifications. And I messaged our real estate agent right away because both my husband and I looked at it and we were kind of like, oh, I feel like we need to go see this place. Anyways, so we went the next morning, I think at 10 a.m. on June 8th, and we walked in and we both kind of looked at each other and we were like, oh, damn, we need to put in an offer on this place because I think it checks almost all the boxes. There's a couple things that need to be addressed. We don't have air conditioning, which is something we'll be doing in 2026. And there's a couple, again, small things that needed to be done, but nothing crazy that we couldn't handle. So this place was listed for $900,000, which was very much at the higher end of our budget. And we put in an offer for $880,000, and we did it within kind of 24 hours. we ended up, I think, at first, and there's a few parts of this story, but we ended up landing on 890, so kind of halfway in between. And that's kind of where we landed with conditional terms. Obviously, we needed an inspection, we needed financing. Then came some headaches. And I share this because I think on social media, sometimes we see like the highlight reel, but I feel like there were a lot of things that I don't want to say went wrong per se, but didn't go as smoothly as I would have liked them. So the first was the issue with the bank draft. So we bank digitally, and Tangerine is the bank that we use. And you cannot get a bank draft within 24 hours. You can get a bank draft, but they like mail it to you. And I was like, okay, well, that's not going to work. So then I'm like, okay, well, we have a TD account because we had kind of kept one account for I don't know why we've kept it, but we have. I think it was like accepting wires or something. Anyways, we've had this bank account forever. We were like, okay, we'll just move the money to TD and then we'll make the bank draft. Well, TD had closed our account without us knowing, which I don't know why on earth they did that, but they did. And there was no money in the account. I think it was like starting to accrue fees and we didn't realize that, and neither of us checked that account. And so I think they just closed it. So that was unfortunate because then we had no way of getting the bank draft in 24 hours. So thankfully, we were able to call my mom, and because she banks with one of the big 5 banks, she was able to get a wire sent over. So that was the other thing. You can't do wires with Tangerine or EQ Bank, which is the other financial institution we're with. And she was able to wire for us, and then we were going to e-transfer her daily to kind of make up that amount. So thank goodness for mom saving the day, because yeah, that was kind of stressful. And I'm going to go on a bit of a rant, but I feel like the banking industry is very archaic. The real estate industry is also very archaic. Like, why are we doing bank drafts, and why can't we do e-transfers? And also, why are there e-transfer limits of like $3,000? That's like an Interact thing. That's not necessarily a financial institution thing. Anyways, ended up doing that for the bank draft or the first deposit within 24 hours. And then for the second deposit, we e-transferred because it was a smaller amount, I think, to the brokerage's trust or whatever. And that all got handled. But I was like, why does this have to be so complicated and dysfunctional? I feel like these arbitrary timelines too of like, you have 24 hours to do this, when we know banks don't do anything within 24 hours, everything's like 3 to 5 business days. I think from the real estate perspective is a bit silly. And, you know, if we had known that we would be seriously considering putting in an offer, we probably would have kept some more money in cash in our bank account. Because I think if you're kind of heading down that process, that's a good thing to do. But we were not in that situation. We kind of just stumbled into this place. We thought like, oh, there's probably going to be something wrong with it. Because we'd seen a number of duplexes like this. And we were kind of like, oh, well, maybe this will just be like the other ones. Or if there was already an offer in, we weren't willing to do a bidding war. Yeah, that was an interesting couple of days. So then came the inspection, and we brought in an inspector to look at a few things. And he noticed that it looked like there was a bit of a leak in one of the windows in the basement in the laundry room. And so we were kind of like, we need to follow up on this. So we asked for an extension to kind of get a secondary inspection in, because there was also a little bit of staining on the outside of the duplex, and we were concerned that there was maybe a little bit of water getting in. So thankfully, the timing for our second inspection was the weekend in June where it poured rain. Like, Mother Nature did us a solid. It poured, and we were really grateful because when we got to the house, we could see that there was like an active leak happening in that window. So that is something that we were able to negotiate into our contract. We said that they needed to fix that by the time that we were moving in or a week before possession. Otherwise, there would be a holdback of, I think, $25,000 is what we landed on. So there were kind of a couple of things that we ended up finding with that inspection. The other was that, I don't know how much people know about windows, but I know a lot now. They're supposed to be flashing on the top and bottom of all windows. And because this house was built in 2005, that was not the case. So we also negotiated about $5,000 off the purchase price to redo that. So we kind of ended at that $885 mark as opposed to $890. And we had that opportunity for a holdback should the window not be completed. Many finance professionals want an edge in a crowded industry. The CBV designation gives you one. It's respected across advisory, deal-making, accounting, and corporate roles because it shows you that you can analyze complex information and translate it into decisions that matter. It's a skill set that travels with you throughout your career. So that was kind of moving along, and then kind of came the chaos with our lenders. And the lenders we had for our first place was MCAP. And we were pretty happy with them. Like, we had always paid our mortgage on time. We had a substantial amount of assets, but man, being an entrepreneur is really, really hard when it comes to purchasing a home. So they really did not like the fact that I was self-employed and didn't have a consistent income. And they did not want to take into account our assets. So they wanted 40% down on this house, which we were unwilling to do because that would have meant raiding a lot of our retirement accounts. And I am not an advocate for putting all of your net worth into one asset class, especially a house, because, you know, if shit hits the fan and you lose your job, you can't sell a window in your house to pay your bills. Like, you can't do it. I think you need funds in the stock market and in an emergency fund that are liquid or have the ability to be liquid quickly. But thank goodness we ended up kind of full circle finding someone at TD through a friend of mine who was willing to take into account the fact that I was an entrepreneur, we had substantial assets, and we were able to get approved for much lower of an amount down. I think it was maybe 20%. And we were able to pull most of that equity from the sale of our townhouse, which I'm going to get to in a second. So I was grateful for that. We did have to reopen our accounts with TD. And we also actually got $2,000 cash because we paid our first mortgage payment from a TD account. So that was good and valuable. So we ended up, getting another $2,000 off our mortgage, basically. So from $885 to $883, if that's how you want to look at it. So kind of while all of this chaos was going on behind the scenes, we also decided to list our townhouse because we didn't want to miss kind of the spring summer push. And it was coming into Stampede. And as many of you know, in Calgary, Stampede basically shuts down the city. And we just really wanted to make sure we were able to get our house sold again so we could avoid bridge financing, which basically means the bank lends you money while you have that second property and you pay a much higher interest rate. I think it's like 9%. So we would have to borrow from TD to bridge that loan and bridge that payment to make the down payment on this house. Yeah, it's kind of complicated. I wish I had known maybe more about bridge financing before, because I would have shifted our dates, because we did end up needing bridge financing for like 2 days in terms of like selling our old house and moving into this house, because we didn't want to like not have a place to live for a day, and moving in one day, which we actually ended up doing, is very chaotic. But yeah, we needed it for 2 days. It wasn't that expensive. I think it was like $30 a day. But over a long period of time, that's very expensive. So we did not want to have to go down that road. So we listed our house. I think in the first few days, we had almost a viewing every single day. Again, a very desirable neighborhood. We priced it to sell. What did we list it at? We priced it to sell. We listed it at 688. So we bought it for 580. We listed it for 688, kind of hoping to land close to that 675 range. And there was a townhouse. So we were a front unit. There was a townhouse a few down from us that listed like 2 days earlier. That was a back unit that listed for 695. And I kind of thought that's a little steep in my opinion. But we were like, okay, let's go for it. We're priced to sell. We want to get our money out. We want to get it out quickly, and we're not like playing around. So we ended up closing within 8 days on our townhouse, which thank God, because keeping your house clean enough for viewings with a toddler is not for the faint of heart. It was like constant cleaning, constant wiping. I don't know how anyone lives like that all the time, because you really can't live in the house. And then, you know, it's hard for viewings because our son goes to bed at 7, and that means like realistically we need people out by 6:30. And a lot of people go to view places kind of after bedtime or after work, not after bedtime. But so there's a very small window for viewing. So thank God it was only on for 8 days. We did end up with some interesting buyers. They were a bit of a pain in the ass. I'm not going to lie. Hopefully they're not watching this, but yeah, they were extremely frustrating. So they really pushed for a early quick close, which again, like we had to say no a couple of times because they wanted it for like August 11th. And I was like, we don't get this place till August 27th. Like, where are we going to put our stuff? And I have no idea why they did that. Anyways, they wanted it before the September long weekend, which we reluctantly said that they could have. I think I ended up getting like $5,000 more off them, because I was like, absolutely not, like, this is going to, like, if you want it faster, you have to pay more for it. So that was kind of my tactic. We went back and forth on a few things, and they ended up also wanting our patio furniture, which was like, whatever. It was old. We were going to get rid of it anyways. So they got that. There were a couple of conditions. I probably should have pushed back on a few more. But again, I think, you know, we were in this place where we really wanted to get it sold quickly. So we agreed to a few of them. One thing that happened a few years ago is our barbecue ended up melting part of the outside of the patio door. And these people were obsessed with the fact that the seal on the window in the patio door had failed. And I was like, it absolutely hasn't failed, because in the winter, like I would always sit on that couch right near the window. You would be able to feel a draft if the window had failed. And it absolutely was not the case. And they had this like inspector come in, and she did this like, I don't know, this dumb test, the ice cube test, where it was like, if you put an ice cube on the glass and make a circle on it and the circle stays, then the seal is broken. We looked it up. We talked to glass experts. Like, that's not a real test that actually shows whether or not the seal is broken. We had a glass expert come out. He was like, the seal's not broken. These people were obsessed. They were like, you have to replace the glass. And so we were like, all right. We went back and forth, and I honestly think that they were just trying to get the price lower, because we ended up closing on one price, and then we kind of had to negotiate on a couple of these other terms. Specifically, this glass thing was a big issue. And they wanted $8,000 off the purchase price because they wanted to replace the whole patio door. And I was like, the whole patio door does not need to be replaced. Like, you guys are being, one, I think, incredibly wasteful. And two, like, why would we give you $8,000 off if, like, the other side of the patio is completely fine? Anyways, so we ended up saying, we'll replace the glass, whatever. And we kind of mended the vinyl on the outside. And we wrote that in a way with our lawyer that it like specifically read like that, because we were like, we're not replacing the patio door. So that ended up costing, I think it was like $3,600 for the glass and another $900 for the vinyl. So it wasn't cheap, but it wasn't $8,000. Where they really kind of started to grind my gears was the night before you get possession, you go for a walkthrough. And nothing, like our real estate agent was fantastic. She followed up with their real estate agent, all this stuff, and we heard nothing from them. So at this point, we were camping in Kimberley with very little cell service because we took possession of our current house. And then because the move happened so quickly, we only had like a day and a half turnaround for moving from our one place to the new house. And it was only 4 blocks. But we decided to stay at a hotel that night. And then we were off to Kimberley to go camping, which had been booked months and months and months ago. And my son was looking forward to it. So we were like, whatever, we'll deal with the house when we get back. So we don't hear anything from them. I'm like, okay, it's all good. We wake up in Kimberley. It's like 9 a.m. My son had slept in. It was beautiful, quiet. I'm like, oh my gosh. I look at my email and at 7 a.m., it's close day for the townhouse. There's an email from my lawyer. And I'm like, fuck, like this is not good. So we get this email that they were like, oh, the vinyl is pulling away and is not fixed. And they want, I think it was like another $1,000 off or a holdback. And I was just like, absolutely not. Like they could have said something last night. It is fixed. It's not replaced, but in the contract we did say fixed. So it ended up all working out. We had to like drive into town to get service, talk to our lawyer talked to their lawyer. It just seemed like it was so unnecessary that they could have, I don't know, they could have done things so differently, but they were just a bit of a headache. But it's all done. And we're grateful to be in this bigger space. So now into some of the numbers, because I think it's important to be transparent with this stuff. So we bought the townhouse for $580,000. We ended up putting about $20,000 into the deck to make it bigger, because when we bought the deck at the townhouse, it was like this tiny, tiny deck that maybe 2 people could sit and have like dinner, and that was it. So we ended up selling the townhouse for $683,000. Plus we paid about $6,000 in, we had to fix our sink because there was a crack in it, and that was $570. The vinyl, which I do have written down here, is $910. We did a carpet cleaning for $339. We had cleaners obviously come in, which was about $600, and then replacing glass, which was $3,600. So it cost us about $6,000 to get the house ready to sell. So for anyone who's thinking you can just turn around and sell a house, oftentimes there's things that they want fixed. And there were a few things that they asked for. They wanted the carpet tightened or something, and I was like, absolutely not. So ended up being about $6,000 in costs associated with getting the house ready to sell. So $683,000 is where we landed on negotiations, minus that $6,000, minus about $20,000 into the deck. So I'm basically taking out all of our costs that we put in, and we were lucky. Like that was, I think we might have put $300 into our ice maker also, but we'll just call that, I don't know, regular maintenance. Anyways, we really didn't have a lot of issues in that house over 5 years or 6 years. We ended up with $657,000 of proceeds, minus that $580,000 that we bought it for. So we had about a $77,000 gain over 6 years, which is about $12,800 per year, which is not bad. But if you actually take this amount and calculate it as a percentage, it's only about 2.2% per year. And that doesn't include any interest that we paid on our mortgage. So I think when people are like, real estate is such a good investment and you made $100K on your house, it's like, yeah, we did sell it for $100,000 more than we bought it for, but there are so many things that go into home ownership. And if our money had been in the stock market as opposed to the house, we definitely would have made more. So as I mentioned, we put $170,000 in originally on the down payment. If we look at like the $12,500 over the $170,000, so if we had just looked at taking that $170,000 and putting it into the stock market versus into a home, the return is a bit better. So it's about 7.5% per year. But if we compare that to the stock market, in 2019, the stock market returned 29%. In 2020, 16%. In 2021, 21%. In 2022, negative 19%, so not a good year. 2023, 24%. 2024, 23%. And 2025, it ended at about 17% for the US stock market. So $170,000 would have turned into $247,000 in the housing market, but it would have turned into $415,000 in the stock market, which is a $168,000 difference, which is basically doubling your money, almost the entire original investment. So do I think homeownership is a good investment? No, I definitely don't. I think there are better ways to grow your wealth if that is your true goal. But again, I think there are lots of reasons for purchasing a home that are maybe more emotional in nature. So definitely stability, freedom to make the place your own. You're allowed to paint, you can hang up things, you can do all the things to your house that you want. Your mental and emotional well-being, not moving from place to place or not knowing if they're going to increase your rent. I mentioned school zones. If that is important to you, if you have kids, that can be really great. And, like my son definitely remembers our first house, but like this will be the house he for sure grows up in because we definitely don't plan on moving anytime soon. I'm like, you can bury me here, honestly. And so I think, when I look back, I have to ask myself, like, am I disappointed? Do I wish we had to have bought that house? Absolutely not. I think I stand by the choices we made. I think that the stock market was absolutely and continues to be more lucrative, which is why the majority of our net worth is in the stock market. And I'm still really happy we bought that townhouse. It was a great first home. I miss it sometimes, but I think this will be a great second home, hopefully a forever home. I love what I've been able to do with The Office. If you're watching this on YouTube or on Spotify, you can see I have my little recording studio set up, which makes my life so much easier as opposed to having to kind of clean up everything around me for my kid, set up my lights, set up my camera. I just have everything ready to go here. So it makes my business life a little bit easier as well. Though we don't have a dining room because this is where the dining room was supposed to be. We did have to paint the entire house because they loved primary colors. Like this office was like dark red. The house was like a dark greeny brown. One of the bedrooms was like dark blue. Anyways, it made the house look so small, but now that we've painted it white, it definitely opens it up. We have beautiful cream built-ins and we're just starting to kind of decorate and personalize and make the space our own, which I'm excited about. So kind of in closing, one thing that I will say is I don't recommend people put all of their money into the housing market. I don't want people to be house poor. Your house should not be your only asset. I think people should aim to have no more than half of their net worth in the housing market, especially when they're starting out. And then if you can get that value down to like 25 to 40% of your net worth, I think that's a much healthier way of building long-term strategic wealth. Because again, we don't know what's going to happen with the real estate market. What I like about the stock market is you are investing in so many different types of companies across so many different countries and industries. I think what's challenging about the housing market is, again, you don't know when a certain area that you're in is going to drop drastically. Or, like I mentioned, that townhouse that listed a couple doors down, they never sold that townhouse. I think they just took it off the market because in December, we just saw the sign come down and there was no like sold sign ever that went up. So, had we listed it a little bit higher of a price, if we had been a back unit, we might have had more challenges. So we were lucky in that sense that we were able to sell it within 8 days. Yes, we had the headache of the buyers. I do not think buying a home is an enjoyable process, but it is what it is. We had some great people on our team. Our real estate agent was incredible. Our lawyer was the real MVP of pretty much everything. He saved our butt a couple of times and I'm so grateful for him. And yeah, I think you do it if you want a home, but it is a bit of a stressful process at the end of the day. I guess in closing, what I'll say is I don't want people to put all of their eggs or money in one asset class. So you don't want all of your money in the housing market. You don't want all your money in one company like Apple. We want to make sure we're diversified. We want to make sure we're leveraging different asset classes to make sure that we're growing our wealth. And I think that in doing so and making sure that we're not just focused on the housing market and real estate, we're able to achieve our financial goals that much better and faster. So that is all for me for season 1 or season 6, I guess, but season 1 of the new podcast. I am busy, heads down, working on the Wealthy Her conference. So if you have not grabbed your ticket to that, please come join us. You can head over to thatswealthbuilding.com/her. And right now tickets are 45% off with the code HER45. So grab your tickets. It's going to be an incredible day on April 15th. And I will be back for season 2 with some incredible guests. I've already started interviewing some of them. And I can't wait to share their stories, their wisdom, their knowledge. And if you ever have a topic that you want covered, or you want to hear more about my financial journey, or kind of anything that's happened in my financial life, I'm a pretty open book when it comes to those things. So you can always email me, hello@janinerogan.com. Thank you so much for listening to this season. It has been such a learning curve bringing back this podcast. We've had so many behind the scenes challenges, I'll say, with like tech and stuff like that, but it's all worked out and I'm so grateful to be back. Season 2 is going to be coming probably within the next month. So mark your calendars for that. And I am just so grateful that you're here and so grateful that you are tuning in every week to listen to this podcast. And I will see you next time. And that's a wrap on this week's episode of The Pink Tax. Thank you for joining me on the front lines of financial fairness. Remember, understanding the cost of being a woman is just the start. Now it's time to demand your worth and build your wealth. Don't forget to subscribe so you never miss a step in dismantling systemic inequality and securing your financial future. If this episode sparked a fire in you, take a screenshot, tag us on social media, and share it with a friend who needs to join the movement. Until next time, keep your wallet guarded, your eyes open, and let's keep fighting for a world where pink is just a color, not a tax bracket.